Hello, this is Senator Gene Yaw. Welcome to a conversation with Gene Yaw. Today, we're going to have a really unique experience. We're going to experience the Wall That Heals. This is a replica of the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C., which has all 50-some thousand names of those who were killed in that war. We're going to talk to former Governor Tom Ridge, who's a Vietnam veteran. We're going to talk to the site manager of this traveling facility, and we're going to learn a lot about what it takes to put this together, how people feel about it, and the honor that goes with the military service that happened during that period of time in our history. I'm with Callie Wright with the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund and specifically the Wall That Heals. Tell me about it.
Awesome. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for deciding to do your show out here and bringing this all to your constituents in Pennsylvania. And we're really excited to have you here and say thank you for your service. I know you're a Vietnam-era veteran as well. This is the Wall That Heals. So it is in a 75% scale replica of the wall in Washington, D.C. It is also a mobile education center, and I believe we're starting to look at some of the items left behind at the mobile education center. And what this offers is a chance to see some of the more than 400,000 items that have been left behind at the wall in D.C.
I know one of the purposes behind this is just to take this whole era out to the general public.
Right, absolutely. And I think too, one thing we can look at here is, I always talk about this item. There's a care package that was left behind at the wall. So this is a care package that was left behind for a man named Charles Stewart at the wall. It was actually sent to him in Vietnam by his mother. He was killed in action and it was returned to her and marked KIA on that date. She got that care package, put it in a closet, she shut the door. More than 20 years later, his best friend from high school took that care package out, brought it down to the wall in D.C., and left it there with a note that said, "Mom and Dad want you to have these cookies and Kool-Aid. It's time they get these to you. They send all their love." So what we're doing with an item like this is we're saying to young people, you might not know Charles Stewart, you might not know a name on the wall, but you know what cookies and Kool-Aid is, you know what it is to be excited about something in the mail. Every single person on this wall has someone that loved them and someone that still does. And so this is one way that we honor and remember them.
I've been to the wall several times in Washington, and your comment about people leaving things there, every time I have been there, there have been trinkets or flowers or packages or something left there.
Absolutely. So back when the wall was dedicated in 1982, before it was even built, into the wet cement, somebody pushed a Purple Heart. And so that's really what we say is the first item left behind. But that really signified we knew this would be a different memorial. This would be a different way that people remembered those 58,318 names on the wall.
Well, one thing for sure, this is the only memorial that I'm aware of that travels.
We are a traveling memorial, and we are the very largest replica of the one in Washington, D.C., which means we are an exact replica. If there's a name on a panel in D.C., you're going to find that name on the same panel here in Harrisburg. And we're 75% scale. So what that means is at the apex in D.C., or the middle, we're standing at 10 feet. But at the apex here, we're standing at 7.5. So we're quite tall. We're also the only memorial that you can come out and you can do a rubbing just like you would in D.C. And so you can come out and touch those names and have that same feeling as you would as the granite in D.C.
That question was asking me about doing a rubbing on it, and I've seen people do that many times in D.C.
Yeah, absolutely. And we offer people the ability to do that out here. We've actually brought out name rubbing forms, and we'll have pencils here available for people. So when you come out, you can take that rubbing home and you can frame it just like you would if you went to the wall in D.C.
Well, can you show me what else you have here?
Absolutely, I'd love to. So one thing that you're going to see as we go along is these are items that we call close to the loss. These are the items like that care package I talked about, but these are also the family photos, the sports items. These are the things that are left immediately after the wall was built, and some of the more poignant items, certainly. The next section is going to be bonds between veterans. You have a lot of guys coming out and they'll leave the 3 cans of beer, right? 3 for them and 3 for their buddy on the wall. And so we have some of that good stuff here. We also have the picture here with the well-known Reagan quote, "The welcome home," that is so often referenced by so many Vietnam veterans. And what this allows us is it allows us to talk to students and talk about this idea of where did this phrase of welcome home come from and give them the history on that. Absolutely.
Okay.
And then when we move down here, we can see some items left behind from people who might have had different jobs or different experiences in Vietnam. So we have the nurses flag, representative of a lot of the nurses who served, and there are actually 8 women who are on the wall. They are all nurses, and there are 11 nurses total. But the one woman we have pictured here is named Sharon Lane, and she is on panel 23 West. And she is the only woman who was killed by enemy fire in 1969. She shares a panel with the youngest person on the wall, a man who is named Dan Bullock, who's 15 years old.
15?
15, exactly. So at 13, Dan Bullock tried to join the Army. He was not able to, gave his birth certificate, but then he took it and did some work with it, took it to the Marines, joined the Marines, made it through Marine boot camp, made it over to Vietnam, and not long after turning 15 was killed in Vietnam, and he shares a panel with Sharon Lane.
When did somebody find out how old he was after he was killed?
After he was killed, his parents were told that he was killed in Vietnam, and they knew his correct age. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have items, and we talk and reference a lot in our organization about the after effects of Vietnam. So we know so many people who served and came home, dealt with so many things after Vietnam. Yes, we're talking about PTSD here, but we're also talking about Agent Orange and dioxins and cancers, type 2 diabetes, many diseases that have been linked to those dioxins. And so this is a place where people can come and see some of the items that reference that. And we actually have a program called In Memory, and we have a plaque on the wall in Washington, D.C. that honors those veterans who served in Vietnam and who died later in life from causes. And we have a ceremony every single year continuing to honor those veterans on Father's Day. So this timeline is really special to me. Back in the office in DC, I work for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, and when I'm not on the road being a site manager and getting to go to all these amazing towns, I get to do education programming. And our education programming, we are committed to at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, educating about the Vietnam era. So that includes what's happening in country, but that also includes what's happening back home in the United States. It includes looking at specific military operations, but it also includes talking about the political history piece, which we know is a massive piece of that area. And I love this because when students can come out, we can highlight things that they might not have known. And we can reference them with things that they probably do know. Most students do know that in 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And a lot of students could tell you that Robert Kennedy was assassinated. But what most students do not know about 1968 is that we reached 30,000 deaths in Vietnam. What most students could not tell you about 1968 is that the Tet Offensive, which is the largest offensive that the North Vietnamese will launch, will begin in the January 1st in 1968. And so this offers us an amazing opportunity to really use this as an educational tool. I also think it's just interesting if you were to show up and to read the entire thing. We also have images up top that illustrate, the in-country photos. We also have the Kent states, the protests, that were happening at home. This is actually my favorite picture on the trailer. This is the POWs coming home in 1973. And I think it is just an incredibly emotional photo, because even though they're so joyful and they're so excited, we'll walk down 3 screens from here and we'll see POW bracelets. And while some of those POWs came home, some of them are listed over here on our wall. And so this for me is a really amazing image. The next photo we have is the fall of Saigon in 75, and then the dedication in 82. And they can connect these pictures to everything happening here.
Very good.
Yeah.
Walk on down the trailer and show me where.
Absolutely. So this photo here, these are your hometown heroes.
Okay.
So your hometown heroes, this is everybody who died in Harrisburg and the surrounding areas whose names are on the wall. Now, this is not all of Pennsylvania. There are more than 3,000 people in Pennsylvania whose names are on the wall. This is simply the people from Harrisburg and some surrounding counties. And what this will do is it will give you the name. It will tell you where you can find them on the wall. You can see the panel and the line number, and it will also tell you where you're from, where they're from, so you can have that hometown connection with them. The following screen is 2 things. One, it's a video. It's playing right now, the PBS video.
Had been unjust and immoral. Feared the monument was somehow meant to glorify.
And what that does is it's a video about the controversy of the wall. It's also going to show images of in memory. And so when we talked about Agent Orange before, this is a chance for people to come out and see those pictures of the people who are the in memory folks from Pennsylvania. And that is the entire state.
Okay. And
Absolutely.
What's this?
Here are the POW bracelets that we talked about before. And what's interesting is that you can go down here and you can say, okay, Patrick Wood, and I can see where that he did not come home and that he is on the wall. But I can go below and look at Robert Doremus and see that he is a returnee. And so his name won't be on the wall. But these are all bracelets that not only are in here, but these are ones that people wore and then brought to the wall in Washington, D.C. All of these items were left at the wall. And so you can see in the images, we can see a lot of the pictures that have been left behind as well.
Well, it's very interesting, and obviously a lot of things have been put together
Absolutely.
here. You're a site manager. I
Yes.
wanted to ask you, what does that entail? Because this is I mean, it's an honor to have this, but then there's a business aspect to
There
it.
is,
I mean, the logistics of putting this together and everything.
Absolutely.
So what do you do?
Okay, so there's actually a lot of people, and it's not just a site manager. We have people back at the office who are planning out this programming long time before. So if communities are interested in hosting the wall, they actually get in contact with us and they put their name out there and they apply to host the wall. So last year we had over 100 applications and we narrowed it down and we're going to 38 stops. From there, we start to work to put together the months-long process. There's committees, and we work with committees and different groups to get out here. When I'm a site manager, what I do is I'm landing here. We're we do a walkthrough, we check out the site, make sure everything looks great. We do an escort in. We had we had over 50 motorbikes escorting us in from Carlisle to here. Then we come out the day this morning and we had the National Guard out. We had over 20 National Guards, men and women, helping us build the wall. And so we build it from the frame out and then we put the panels in. Then we open up the trailer, get the canopy on, and then we're just here all day. There's volunteers here all day and all night. We're here for a really big portion of that. And we're looking to help people find names, and also we're looking forward to seeing students out here and teaching them about so many of these
Will there
items.
be a lot of students come here tomorrow or next day?
Absolutely. So there's been a lot of kids who've come through already. So right now, and I know this is a piece of Pennsylvania curriculum where they're going to the State House in 4th grade. So we actually had quite a few 4th graders walking through today. I got an email from a high school teacher today who walked by who's bringing her students over as well. And so we will talk with those student groups during the day. We love to do tours, Boy Scout troops, football teams, anyone who's interested in coming down and checking out the wall.
Well, it's all about education.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like a lot of work that you have.
We keep very busy, but it's an amazing job and it's an amazing experience. And it's really amazing to be able to come out here. I grew up in a small town. I live in DC now and I love it, but I love coming back to smaller towns and getting to come out and meet people and talk with people about the wall and help them find names.
You mentioned about the invitations that came out were just to the General Assembly, no's, R's, or D's, just like names on the wall.
Yeah.
And what does this mean to you? This whole having the wall here, this event. What?
Well, Senator, first of all, I'm glad you mentioned that the invitation to the general public was from Pennsylvania's General Assembly. It didn't say it's from the Republicans. It didn't say from the Democrats. It said basically from the people you have elected to serve. And I don't think there's much greater service to periodically take a look in memory and honor those who had served in a different capacity a long time ago. So for me as a Vietnam veteran, I'm privileged to serve with almost 2.7 million others who served in country. Know some names of people. They're not names of young men whose names are on the wall. It's a high honor to be invited, and I'm really grateful. You know, nobody checked people's registration before they put on America's uniform, and this reflects there's ethnic diversity here, there's religious diversity here, there's racial diversity here. Now, those are things that sometimes divide us as a country, but they're all joined in common cause on this wall. So for me, you ask what it means, it's a very significant event for me personally, but I think I tip my hat to the General Assembly for thinking enough of these men and women to honor and remember them with the moving
Well, you mentioned something I'm very, very involved in, and I believe in universal public service for the reasons that you just said. Diversity. I mean, I grew up in the northern part of this state, and the first time I lived with any minorities was when I went in the Army. And that was something I think that we've gotten away from. And this, I mean, even as tragic as all this was, there's still it brings everybody together because we all had a common purpose.
Well, but you're absolutely right. I mean, the fact is that the Army is a meritocracy, number one. The Army, when you served and when I served, really reflected, maybe slightly disproportionately in minorities, but still most of the men with whom I served. But that's not important. It was a reflective of the diversity of America. And we used to have an expression in Vietnam, they called it same mud, same blood. So it didn't care where you were from. Yeah. And by the way, if you got shot, you got wounded, it was the same color. Yeah. And you bled red, white, and blue. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the Army and the military service writ large is a melting pot. It's becoming more and more meritocracy. And, there's that sense of service, not only to the country, but to one another. And it's no surprise that people like you and others who are veterans, they find some other way to continue their public service. They elected office, they work for government, they go in law enforcement, they're firefighters, they're first responders. There's something about a DNA somehow for people, once they serve, they keep serving.
Well, Governor, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us for a few minutes, and I know that there are a lot of people here that want to talk to you and you want to reminisce with, so thank you very much.
My great pleasure. It was a pleasure to join you and your audience. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Almighty God, we gather together on this beautiful spring evening, united in a common purpose, to honor and to remember the men and women whose names are etched in this wall and those who stood with them. Their names, their laughter, their love are forever carved in the hearts of those who cared for them, those who knew them, and those who served with them. We pray, O God, that you would grant unto those who have been forced to drink the bitter dregs of combat peace, perfect peace. And for those who struggled and came home, and those who came home and struggled, grant unto them as well, O God, your perfect peace. May this wall be one which does not divide, but one that unites. Not one that holds back, but one that draws together. May we never forget their service or their sacrifice.
During my life, the opportunity to serve my community, this Commonwealth, and our country has come to me in many, many different forms. None of the responsibilities or titles that I've ever enjoyed or have been privileged to be afforded are as great a source of personal satisfaction than infantry staff sergeant, Vietnam vet. I can't imagine a better reference. I'm honored to be with all of you this evening, but particularly to be in the company of fellow Vietnam veterans. The bipartisan nature of this event demonstrates that civil discussion around common interests often finds common ground. Tonight, our common ground and our common goal is to remember and to honor those who wore the uniform of our country 4 and 5 decades ago in a place few citizens then, and perhaps even maybe a few citizens now, couldn't point to a map and tell you where it's located. While historians will forever debate America's involvement in Southeast Asia, there is one profoundly positive and important legacy associated with my fellow Vietnam veterans. America has finally learned to distinguish between the war and the warrior. Regardless how individual citizens view the role our military has and continues and will continue to play, we are universally grateful for the sacrifice and service of those who have answered their call, and I might add, the sacrifice and service of their families as well. I can't forget the families. We can't forget that where mom and dad puts on the uniform, the other spouse puts on the uniform, the kids put on the uniform, and they're at the call at the commander-in-chief. And if you got to move once, you move 5 times, you move 10 times. That's just the quality of the men and women we have in our military. But I believe this distinction between the war and the warrior was led by Vietnam veterans who remember all too well the reception they frequently encountered upon their return home. And I don't know of a single Vietnam veteran who hasn't thought about a comrade in arms whose name is etched in this black granite and who hasn't privately said to himself, or maybe to someone real close to him that would understand, there, but for the grace of God, go I. Same mud, same blood was the expression we heard. The wall is a reminder of how the burden and the pain and the suffering of a war is shared across many ethnic, religious, and racial communities that sadly today seem so divided. It is now time to bring to light the 58,318 names of the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you, and may God continue to bless the greatest country on the face of this earth.